So we talk a lot about what Chatham has, what we got to focus on promoting to bring people in. Is there anything that you feel that we're missing in Chatham, Kent, that we could be building, or again the small things, not just the things I like?
I was just saying, I think you're trolling for
Okay.
multi-purpose.
Not just things I like.
He's pitching it. Here he goes.
But what are those small things that we can actually go after those small wins for to bring people into back in the community? Small win. You're the one that said small wins.
Yeah,
On you,
well,
my
I
friend.
mean, I know Brock saying I think you're trolling for the
Yeah.
storage flags or the
Yeah.
marathon trail, but I think this is something
Yeah.
because that's something that directly connects our communities, and that's also going to bring
Yeah.
people in just for tourism alone. So
Right.
even if we're not talking simply about bringing people back to settle down, it puts Chatham Kent on the map for something other than it's an older community. It's got a lot of history. There's things happening there. There's bigger events. Like when you think of Boston, for instance, Boston Marathon is a
Yeah.
huge point, right? Like everybody knows the Boston Marathon. If you get events like that, those are small wins, and it's not just putting Chatham on the map.
Right.
If you have something like the Marathon Trail,
The Great Ontario Marathon, right?
but it connects all the stop points on
Yeah.
that trail, right? Because it's about the trail, not about one particular place, like the
Right.
starting point.
One thing I think we need to make it a little easier. We need the municipality to say yes more often. That was a big thing on the bus tour. Again, Ben Roboys with the pickle processing plant. He went to the water commission 5 times before somebody even just wanted to hear him. He spends $50,000 a year on water, and he's willing to buy another $50,000. But no, it hasn't been done before. So we just say no. We got to get better at fitting that round peg into a square hole sometimes. We just have to work together. I mean, ultimately we can't always say yes, but I think we need to open more doors instead of trying to push them closed.
Yeah, another thing that he mentioned was each year he doesn't know if he's actually going to get that water, right? So as a business, that's a huge business risk when you're going to come into the season and don't even know if you're going to get water, right? So it's definitely a program that I think we should take a serious look at implementing, because I imagine there's a lot more in the ag community that can use the municipal water. Like he mentioned, only 30% of the PUC is a capacity. So,
Oh yeah. And we have what's called the declining step rate.
Right.
So the more water you use as an industrial user, it actually gets cheaper.
Right.
Which is a big asset that most communities don't have.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at ag production, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
You're looking at value added type of processing, that's an advantage.
Yep.
And they are, I know now. I'm not too aware of the background of it, but they're now piloting some projects where they are having ag facilities tap into like fire hydrants,
That's
right.
and starting to do that, which is a great way to get capacity out when you have it. Right?
to use it. And I know there's a concern with the municipalities, like the towns, losing their water. But at Union Gas, we have meters, and you pay attention to pressure and volume.
Yeah.
So you just treat the person tying into the hydrant as an interruptible customer. If the pressure's dropping, sorry, you can't draw any more water.
Yeah.
But it's just an example of
Right.
someone who wants to expand their business, and they're kind of dealing with fear each year.
Yeah.
And he even said that he would expand his business if he was able to get it.
Yeah, that's something I'd also like to learn more about, because we had one particular issue at our Art in the Park Tilbury where an entrepreneur wasn't able to participate because of different regulations she wasn't aware of. And then also Firefest, there's some rumblings around this being the last Firefest with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
nod
it's in the
towards
paper.
red tape and bureaucracy being the reason that's not happening. So something's wrong there, right? When you have volunteers giving their time trying to make an event for the community who throw their hands up and say enough is enough. We need to create that culture of enabling within the municipality, and I think that requires brave counselors at times, right?
Yep,
to be able to ask those hard questions and make sure that when our community members are putting themselves out there to try to make something happen, they're not being shut down, and they're not being you need to follow the rules, right? People don't want salmonella. People don't want you don't want break-ins to run an event. We get that, but how can we encourage that culture shift, right? Because I think there is a little bit of that fear or no culture that is happening from time to time in the municipality, and we need to figure out a way to address that.
And I think it's a good point, and I think there needs to be some discussion over cost recovery versus investment. So a lot of times we look at those events are viewed as cost recovery, right? Like if you're using power, you got to pay for it. You're going to rent the park, you're going to do all those types of things, but they're adding benefit to the community. So at some point we need to have a discussion. Do we think that we really need to recover the cost of an event as a municipality when someone's using Tecumseh Park or using a facility in Wheatley, or do we want to be facilitators of that and say, you know what,
Yeah.
this is something that's important in the community. We should be facilitating the event, and we should have some skin in the game with respect to, you know, not maybe expecting we're going to get full cost recovery for someone using open space. At the end of the day, if that space isn't being used, no one's recovering any
Right.
cost.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
And those spaces are there to host community events. Those spaces are there to build community. So if we're not able to access them appropriately, and I mean, outside of council, you know, I've run events in Tecumseh Park, and it's challenging. You know, you've got a lot of paperwork to get through, and you know, I'm someone that, you know, has a municipal email, can pick up the phone pretty easily, get a hold of somebody, and it's still challenging.
Yeah.
So we do need to look at how do we concierge people through that system? How do we say, yeah, you want to run an event? Here's a person you call. They're gonna walk you through each thing. We're gonna make sure you have everything in place, and we're gonna make sure that you can have a successful event.
And that just loops back to what we were just talking
Yeah.
about, because then you're given that quality of life
Yeah.
that may attract somebody to work live,
Exactly.
and play here.
Yeah.
Right. We need to allow our leaders to go through these processes with no surprises, is what I say. Like, you don't want that surprise the night before that says, oh crap, all of a sudden we need to go through this, and this, and that's going to cost us hundreds of dollars that we don't have because we're just doing this off of the side of our desk, right?
Yep.
We need to make sure we enable people to be able to do what they want and achieve their community goals.
Kind of like doing this thing without the perfect internet connection, right? You know, it's a little bit of a surprise, and some people were let down early, but we got it back up and running, and the best we can. Let's go
I just
ahead.
want to say, I think Brock is absolutely right in that we need to get a shift in perspective. When the municipality is looking at things in terms of recovering costs, we're not actually looking at it from the perspective of the people who are running these events, and really, they're the ones who are generating value in the community, not the councillors who are sitting there denying people in the community from actually adding value. So it really is a shift in perspective, I think, and it is a brave step, because what's the easy way out? The easy way out is to look at hard, easy numbers and say, yep, this isn't a good choice, so let's move away.
Right.
It's much more difficult to put yourself in the position of the person who's, you know, committing their time if they're volunteering for these kinds of events, and say, hey, I don't know exactly how much value is going to come out of this event, but this is a community event that's going to generate value that I can't clearly identify numerically, and it's potentially worth it. So let's
There's
give it a
intrinsic
shot.
value.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Who's to say that the person who's attending the Tecumseh Park event isn't going to then tomorrow book it for their family reunion or
Yeah.
their wedding or
Exactly.
whatever, right?
Yep.
Like, more
Yep.
exposure to our community spaces and places likely will result in more revenue generation for those spaces and
Definitely.
places.
Yeah, if you're starting a family and you're looking at a place to settle, and all else is the same, and you see that there are these kinds of community events that are going on, you've got a place to bring your kids, you've got places to spend your free time. That is a huge draw. It's a huge draw. Instead of saying, no, it's a barren wasteland most of the time, but don't worry, we've got great housing prices. Don't ask about the taxes. You know? Like,
Don't ask
these
for
things
the
have serious benefits that you can't always determine up front.
Yep.
And I think that's incumbent on people that are in leadership positions to highlight some of those things sometimes
Yes.
too. So, you know, it's politically probably easier to point out some of the faults in the community and focus on, you know, exploit that rural-urban divide and look at these missed opportunities. It's easier to do that and, you know, and gain a little bit of attention than it is to say, hey, actually, there's these great things going on in our community. We need to promote them,
Right.
and we need to facilitate more of them. So
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, maybe it's not the easiest thing to do. Maybe it's not, you know, tweetable all the time.
Right.
But sometimes I think there is a responsibility, if you want to make the community a better place, to say, how do we facilitate these people that are doing great things, rather than, hey, I'm going to nitpick on things that aren't going so well. So I think sometimes that's a shift in focus, and that's more about, you know, problem solver focus than it is a, you know,
Yeah.
problem picker focus.
And that just happens. Somebody was actually on your show. Said we have 50 more employees after amalgamation than we did with amalgamation. We should have been eliminating jobs. No, we've maybe increased our quality of life here. We've offered more programs
Yeah.
with the Super Kids. We've expanded Riverview Gardens with the Alzheimer's Wing. We have to look at things outside of just these facts that we can all spout off that really at the end of the day don't mean anything. That 50, but did we increase our quality of life here? Did we help
Yeah.
attract more talent? Those things all have value that are not going to be seen in a column on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I,
these-
oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, and I think, Brock, to your point, like shouting out to staff in the municipality that are doing a great job. Like, I know people are singing the praises of small business center staff who are going through this process with their support. Like, we need to highlight that because I think that's part of the culture shift, right?
Yep.
If we recognize, and we have business owners, and I know just in Tilbury there's a woman who's going through a process opening up a not-for-profit hub in the community essentially, and now she's going to be turning it into a small cafe. Praised Rosemary at the Small Business
Yeah.
Center, right? So
Right.
those sorts of praises create that culture shift because people start to say like, well, how come she's getting mentioned all the time, or how come that area is getting
Yeah.
mentioned all the time? Let's start to act more like them.
Yeah.
And so to your point, it's exactly, yes, we have to call out when we see things not being quite right, but we also have to really praise when things are happening that are good, and there's a lot of good happening in Chatham.
Celebrate the successes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Small wins.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah.
And we don't do enough of that. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
We focus on the negative, not the positives.
So that's how you get buy-in, small wins, because over time people see the positive and then eventually start coming around.
It's like building a
Yeah.
snowball.
Yeah,
Yeah. You get behavioral changes, and that's how you change a culture.
exactly.
Yep.
You know, I keep getting denied, or you know, let's say I'm going to run an event, and I keep getting denied every time because of something that the municipality is putting me through. And all of a sudden things are changing, and now I can run my event. I'm getting lots of volunteers. The event starts to grow over time. Small wins,
Yeah.
and that's exactly
Yeah.
it.
And really, I think like when you look at things like tourism, marketing, and events, people often say like, "Oh, that's soft politics. Tell me about budgets. Tell me
Yeah.
about this. Tell me about fiscal responsibility." Well, wait a minute. I feel like a lot of those soft costs, people that work really hard from Monday to Friday, or they work really hard on their 412s that they're running.
Yeah.
They want something to do that's relaxing, that's enjoyable, that doesn't require them to drive to London or drive to Detroit to do
Yeah.
something in their community. So that's what's attracting people here. That's what's keeping people here, and that's something. It's not something that's really soft, right? Like, because there are hard, tangible benefits that come out of these events and activities.
Yep.
And if you don't focus on those supposed soft
Soft.
things, the hard things get real hard.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
If
Yeah.
you have declining population, if you have empty downtown cores, if you're not promoting local businesses, those day-to-day budget decisions get even more challenging.
harder and
So
harder.
you have to look at some of those things as an investment in sort of the long-term benefit of the community, and maybe sometimes young people that have a 20 and 30 year sort of time horizon
Yep.
are able to think about that a little bit more.
Yep.